Welcome, everybody, to Secret Sauce, the show where we unpack business tips, life hacks, and advice from industry leaders. I'm Karly.iacono. Today, I am joined by Tom Onder, a partner at Stark & Stark, which is a full-service commercial real estate-focused legal firm. Tom, I am so happy to have you today. Can't wait to hear your insights. Thank you for joining us.
Karly, thanks for having me. Always good to see you. I love the Fast Five series you got here with Secret Sauce. So very happy to be here. Thank you. So just tell you a little bit about me and my firm, my law firm, Stark & Stark. I've been with Stark & Stark about 20 years now. I'm chair of our shopping center and retail development group, where we have about 20 attorneys that focus on transactional litigation needs for owners, developers, and management companies throughout New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. I also am state chair of ICSC's Philadelphia region. So I help to try to put together some good programming and stuff and work with owners and developers and retailers, through the ICSC organization. And then, lastly, I got a little bit of a side hustle, Karly, with the law. Besides being chair of our shopping center and retail development group, I'm also specialized in bankruptcy, protecting landlords, owners, and developers in any tenant related Chapter 11 bankruptcies, which over the last few years have been quite a few.
I've got to stop you and say, I don't think that's a side hustle. You're actually quite deep in the expertise on retailer bankruptcies. So got to correct you there. I think it's officially more than a side hustle.
I really appreciate those kind words. I got to say, listen, my team and I, we put a lot of time and effort into taking a look at and trying to find out, who could be possibly filing to, help our landlords, developers, and owners, make good choices and to try to, negotiate better terms when they are put into a bankruptcy situation by a tenant.
So I'd like to stick on that for the bulk of today's content, because I think retail bankruptcies are important to all of us in the industry, no matter what role we have. They really are wide reaching in their effects. So what do you think we should predict or expect for the near term in terms of retail bankruptcy? Kind of in light of the market volatility and the economics, there's a lot of chatter. Things might get really bad, they might not. So what's your perspective?
So I got a little bit of good news, and I think I got a little bit of bad news. Before I talk about either of the news, I put out every January or February, and also 6 months later in a year, in the middle of the summer, I put out a top 10 list of bankruptcies for folks to watch out for. And we take a look at the data and we make some predictions of who to watch out for. Not to necessarily say they're going to file, but some tenants that you want to kind of keep an eye on. So when you're doing a lease, when you're doing a renewal, you can kind of know what to expect, or to at least understand that, to have that in your negotiation, pocketbook. The last time we did one was at the tail end of January, beginning of February. And, the 10 that we had back then were, AMC, the movie theater, Pie 5, Pizza, 9 West, Mattress Firm, Barnes & Noble, Rite Aid, Equinox, The Children's Place, The Gap, and Capri. Luckily for landlords, and also for them, they haven't filed yet. And so my prediction, actually, which is a little different than what I've been doing for the last, 8 years or so that I've done this top 10 list, is to actually predict that there's not going to be any major retail bankruptcy filings for the rest of the year. And you're probably asking, well, why, and how could that be? Because you put the top 10 list out. Well,
right.
I think, where we're at in terms of the economy, rising interest rates, you'll still have a very tight labor market, and also consumers still have a lot of money, in their pockets from savings over the course of, the pandemic. I don't think that that's going to fizzle out to start really affecting retailers to make the call whether they're going to file until after the first of the year. And there's really two other things, or it's really two mile markers that I think we also have to throw into that mix, which is the back to school season, and also the holiday shopping season. Back to school is at the end of August, beginning of September. Holiday shopping season with the various holidays in December. those two things are huge, huge money makers for retailers. And retailers don't usually want to file during those two time periods because it's cash that they get to keep. And they will usually file afterwards so they can have all this cash beforehand, because once they go into bankruptcy, that cash has to get reported, and there's a lot of procedures and things like that. So I think that when you factor everything together, that we're looking at no major retail bankruptcies until after the first of the year, and I'm predicting probably around February or March is when you're going to start to see another wave hit. So good news right now for landlords and owners. Bad
But
news.
wait. On the good news, that wasn't necessarily all good. All I heard was if they haven't filed by this point in the year, they're probably not filing this year because they don't want to miss their quote busy season, right? Not that they're doing great.
Not that they're doing
Just
great.
that they're hanging on and we've got some more profit to take first, right?
Yes. And when I say good news, I say that it's good news in one sense, is that you can plan for things.
Right.
So any business owner, one of the things, there's going to be issues that are going to pop up. And one of the things you can do is you can try to plan or manage what those issues are. So if landlords, owners, and developers, if they know that that's not going to be tomorrow or for at least the next 6 months, at least they can start planning. So when they're doing lease negotiations, when they're doing renewals, when they're giving options, they can try to use that or put that into their toolbox of things that they need to address, with the tenant. They can ask for financials. They can really, try to see where they're at to try to better themselves or put themselves at a better footing going forward. Again, it's not necessarily good news, but it's at least news that a landlord or owner or developer that they can better plan for.
It's actually incredibly helpful with time to implement some of those other things, more financial reporting, digging deeper into the tenant's plans long term, having that breathing room to make those adjustments before everything kind of explodes is great. So I would take that as good news. Thank you for clarifying.
Thanks. And one other thing with that, besides the checking the financials, besides the lease negotiations, the other thing that it does is it gives landlords the ability to start leveraging enforcement efforts now. And so sometimes you'll have a tenant and you'll decide, listen, I don't want to necessarily go forward with either filing an eviction action or some type of enforcement action. Let's try to have our leasing team, work things out with them, knowing that there's a runway of probably about 6 months before a possible filing or it could occur. Lets the landlord to maybe make that call for the enforcement earlier on. And what's interesting with that is that over the course of the pandemic, a good portion of my practice, besides doing the leasing and a little bit of transactional side, a good portion of my practice is litigation. And over the last year and a half to 2 years, we've not really been able to move cases forward. And what that does is that takes out a huge piece of leverage from a landlord to get the tenant to pay. Now courts are opening up, cases are moving forward. So landlords, knowing this information about that there's probably a runway of 6 months that before any filings really start happening, if they start doing the enforcement measures now, it can put them in a better position to get paid, and also either if a tenant is not going to be able to survive, possibly hand over the keys so they can get somebody else in there. So again, it's all about planning. It's all about trying to figure things out with the timing.
That's a real strategy advantage. And I would definitely encourage any landlord listening who thinks they might be in this position in 6 months to call Tom today. And this is a conversation that could really impact the positioning of an asset down the road if handled, let's say, more carefully, more thoughtfully now with this extra time. Very good. Good insight.
Now, always here by the phone for anybody. So
yeah, call your attorney.
Yes.
Was there bad news, or do we have a second piece of bad news, or was that all wrapped up into good and bad in that?
I think that's the second piece is when it's going to hit. And it depends on like what's the wave that we saw over the last couple years was pretty bad, but even with that wave, there were also a lot of places that were opening. There were a lot of new tenants that came on board. There were also opportunities for landlords to go ahead and to release or to reconfigure spaces. Like, for instance, the Sears bankruptcy. Everybody was talking about it before they filed and worried about it. And then all of a sudden they filed and people got back spaces where they had leases at like $6 a square foot that they were able to relet at market rates. So it really
Right.
wasn't that bad
Huge
after
upside,
it. Yeah. So
actually.
yeah. So again, there's a silver lining in it. And again, I think it comes back to planning and preparing and seeing what's ahead, the road ahead, and trying to manage that. So hopefully that was some helpful information for everybody out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing it. And before we wrap up today, do you have any personal life hacks or advice you'd like to share?
Yeah, I got two. So the first one is kind of a nerdy thing, which is Dragon Dictation or dictation software. I absolutely love dictation software. It helps me slice time. It helps me be able to write better briefs, better letters, better settlement agreements, better leases for folks. Because it gives me, talking about timing earlier, it gives me time to take a look at something because I'm able to get it out very quickly with dictating it. It also gives me the ability to shoot it over to somebody, to get like an extra set of eyes on. And it just, again, it goes back to that timing thing of being able to save time, slice a little bit of time here and there to make things better. The second thing that I got, and it's more of a kind of a global thing, which is I really learned after the pandemic. As you know, Karly, our firm and our practice group, we do a lot of like different marketing efforts. Like we had, we had a nice cocktail party in Las Vegas for ICSC. We do a wonderful little retreat in February when it's snowing down in Key West, Florida, where we bring a bunch of developers and owners together. And I think you had the opportunity to come on at least one of them and share stories and things like that. With all of that, you have to have, planning, you got to put stuff together. But during the pandemic, we couldn't do a lot of those activities because it was the pandemic. So one of the things that I thought about was, how do I make this better when we start doing these activities again? And so when we started coming back to the office, when we started doing more of these marketing things, I tried, and our team has really gotten together to understand the vision of what we have when we're doing these different activities. And I'd like to call just buy-in, whether it's, my administrative assistant, my paralegal, the other attorneys on my team, my fantastic marketing team. I can't say enough about Sarah, Jordan, and TJ and Val. But getting that buy-in so they understand what the vision is that I have, and also getting their feedback, because it really matters on, the materials you're putting out, how you're planning an event for everybody from, the lower levels, up to, the higher levels, to really understand, what you're trying to project. It saves a lot of time, saves a lot of effort with stuff, and you also get some great ideas from people. So buy-in is another kind of life hack of really trying to bring the team together so everyone understands what that vision is.
So on the first one, to recap really quickly, the dictation software, Dragon Dictation, is this an app or is this a program that you use on your computer?
It's an app. Yeah.
It's
And
an
I
app
think
for your
that
phone.
there's,
Okay, got
yeah,
it.
and I think there's a couple other apps that are like that. So, I like Dragon Dictation. If there's other software out there, just a dictation software, it saves a lot of time.
And then buy-in from your team when coming back together and planning in-person events.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Excellent. I'm so glad you could join us today. Thank you for sharing the insight into retailer bankruptcies and also your personal life hacks to make your team more efficient. Really appreciate the time you spent with us today. To everyone watching, that was Secret Sauce. I am Karly Iacono. We hope to see you again very soon. Thanks so much, Tom.
Thanks, Karly. See you.